I'll never forget this one time where I was in a foreign country that I don't speak its language, and I was in the women's musalla of a masjid, and I was reciting Surah Al-Ahzab out loud, and my friend was next to me correcting me. And I stumbled on a verse, and before my friend can correct me, I hear from the back of a musalla, from behind me, a voice of a woman, and she says, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, and Allah is indeed all forgiving, all merciful. And she corrected me and she told me what the end of the verse was. And subhanAllah, that woman who was there, who lives in this country, who speaks the language, is correcting my Quran memorization. And yet if I tried to speak to her in any other language, it probably wouldn't work. And she actually didn't even have her mushaf open. So she had the surah memorized, and she corrected me, and I couldn't even thank her in that language, and she couldn't even speak to me in the language that I knew. But we understood each other that here was this Quran dismantling every single language barrier between us. There was no barrier between us. And this is what the Quran did for us. And it was such a profound moment that I will never forget. Another time when my friend was in an airport and she was also in a foreign country, and she was there at her gate reciting Quran, and one sister comes to her and she speaks to her in the little English she knew, and she said basically, would you want to recite Quran together? So they're here in a foreign airport that's foreign to both of them. They both don't know the language of this city that they're in, yet they're reciting Surah Yasin together, page by page. My friend being from the United States of America, the other sister being from Guinea in Africa, and here they were bonding through the Quran. And my friend said her voice was so incredibly beautiful in her recitation of the Quran, subhanallah. And these moments where the Quran shows us the removal of every possible barrier between us. It reminds me of a verse in Surah Fussilat, verse 44, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here challenging those who came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and were not happy with the language that the Quran came down with. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't even go back to the language in which it was sent. He says, قُلْ هُوَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا هُدًى وَشِفَاء, that verily indeed this Quran is for those who believe. They have that internal belief system, that internal drive, and it will be a guidance for them and a shifa. And the tafsir scholar Ibn Ashur says about this word shifa in this verse, he says that this removes every single type of spiritual illness that is possible, because it is the eyes and the ears and the hearts that are blind. But once we come to the Quran, seeking its guidance for what it is, being from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we find no barriers. Language is not a barrier. And in fact, we connect through the Quran with each other despite those language barriers, because of the shifa, because of that spiritual mending that the Quran brings with it. And there are so many various stories just like this of people who are able to connect to the Quran without being able to even say a single word in the other person's language. And that's the power of the Quran, that it was sent to every heart. It was sent to your internal before your external. And that's what the people in Surah Fussilat were so fixated about. They were so fixated on the external image of the Quran that they were neglecting the internal potential it had on their hearts and on their spiritual senses, as Ibn Ashur says. So all these stories remind us that indeed the Quran لا تنقضي عجائبه, its wonders never stop. They will keep coming. You will find them. You can find them in a stranded airport in a foreign country. You can find them in a country where you don't even know its language, and yet the Quran can create a connection that is not limited to a language.